good morning, YouTube channel, The Influence. Welcome to the Revival Center YouTube page as we continue to talk about the influence of our society. So thank you guys so much for joining us today. We have Pastor Devin on this side of the camera. Oftentimes he's on the other side working and doing so many different things to make it happen. But he is joining us today as we start a brand new series as we look at the absence of worship in man's life. Whenever God is not, if we're not worshiping God, then man is going to worship something. So this is going to be an incredible series. So Brother Devin, good to have you. Thank you for joining us today and over the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, looking forward to it. It's going to be a really interesting series. I think, when you look at this, it's something that I think a lot of people, when we talk about it, they'll be like, oh, I always felt something about these subjects, but sometimes when we put language to it, it's like it all makes sense now.
Yep.
This is why people do this. So
yep.
I think it's going to be good.
So yeah, turn on your thinking cap, open up your heart, open up your mind as we begin to go down some pretty deep rabbit holes and talk about some things that's happening in our culture and our society, but with the context of the Bible and of God in it. As always, this is live on Tuesdays at 8:30. So Brother Aaron Limbaugh is behind the camera on the chat there. If you want to jump on there and talk to us through him, please do that. We would love to connect with you and have some interaction with you. And if you have not already liked this video, please like it. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel as you are helping us get the influence up. And that is your way to be a partner with the influence. So with that being said, let's get into it. As we begin to set this topic up, today we're going to start off talking about what worship is for man. And then we're going to slip over into some how communism or how government views religion, and then we're going to slip over into in our political world, in our culture, in our society, that when you remove religion, when you remove God, what's replaced by that? And today one of those subjects is going to be the environmental the environmentalist, who I believe those who are sold out to that particular thinking, it's religion to them, and we're gonna dive into that today. So, brother Devin, let's start here. We are commanded in God's Word that we are to worship the Lord with what? All of our heart,
soul, mind, and strength.
Soul, mind, and strength. And if we remove that component out of our heart, if we remove that component out of our spirit and out of our psyche and our worldview, and we're left to our own demise in terms of what we pursue, throughout human history, people are going to worship something.
Right.
So just talk about that for a second. When you look through the annals of history, what all has people worshiped? Right there where you're sitting at home, think about it with us. What all has people worshiped through the years when you take God out of that equation?
Yeah, I think there are so many answers that probably we could be here all day, but I think a lot of them, just examples, are when you look at, let's say, ancient religions. Let's just go way back. Everything, you can even see this in Hinduism, as it's almost idea that everything is a god, or everything makes up God. So if you look at the tree, that is a god, or that is a part of God. So the difference between pantheism and panentheism, it's those. So this tree is God, the river is God. Or they may, think of like some other cosmic deity or something like that. They've worshipped other people, like the king, whoever is in this authority structure. You look at ancient Egyptians, and they have the Pharaoh was called the son of Ra, so Ra, their sun god. So they said, okay, the Pharaoh is a god. He's the son of Ra.
Yeah.
Or even sometimes they say he is Ra himself, come down. He's a human.
Hey Devin, can you check if your mic is on?
Yeah, and so when you begin to look at what all people has worshipped, they've worshipped alligators, they've worshipped frogs, they have worshipped the sun, the moon, the stars. They have worshipped everything that you can think of throughout human history. And one of the reasons that the Jews and one of the reasons Christians were persecuted is because the Bible says you can have no other gods before me. And when you make that statement to Pharaoh, or you make that statement to a communist dictator, or you make that statement to the Roman emperor that I cannot worship anything else on this planet except for God, they can't stand for that. They can't allow that to happen, and so therefore you're going to be persecuted. If you note the book of Daniel, think about Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego. The king Nebuchadnezzar had made this big old gold statue. When you hear the music, you have to bow down. And they said, we can't do that. We can't do that. I can serve no other God except Jehovah God, was thrown into the fiery furnace. You think about in the book of Acts that when Paul and the missionaries and the apostles were going around and preaching that Jesus Christ was resurrected, it wasn't that Roman society could not handle another God. I mean, they worship hundreds of gods, okay? But it was the message that you cannot worship any other God except Jesus. And that is what got them thrown into prison or martyred and killed. My point of going down this road right here, is everything good on your end now?
Yeah, I mean, it looked fine, so I'll just try to talk louder. I don't know, maybe I was just talking soft. So
okay, hey, we're live, y'all. Hey, we are not professionals.
Y'all are hitting the same decibels here, so I think we're good.
Yeah.
We are not professionals, but continue the thought. The reason I'm kind of going down this road a little bit is because I believe, and I do believe this, so it's not just something that I'm just saying as an opinion. I do truly believe this, that even if you're an atheist, the fact that you're committed to the precepts and teachings of atheism, that becomes the God that you worship, which is your intellect. And you see this even in the last series that we did with God and Science, that when an atheist is all of a sudden challenged with the concept that intelligent design could possibly be in the cards of creating the universe, they would refuse to say that and would prefer to say that crystals just got together and hit and it blew up, or an alien came up with the idea. Anything but God. See, to me, that's religion. That's a religious tenet. For example, if you told me God cannot heal, if you told me that, if you want to call me a religious person, call me a religious person. I think I fit that detail, that definition. Now, but watch, if you told me God cannot heal, I would not believe you. Tracking with me? I would not believe you. There's nothing on this earth that you could convince me that God does not heal. Why? Because I'm a believer.
Right. Yeah.
I'm a true blue believer, sold out to the tenets of what I believe.
Yeah. And I think there's a real sense that you can be dogmatic, or to use another word, religious, or you can set up a belief system around anything, right? Is that, it doesn't have to necessarily be like one of the like Christianity or Judaism or Hinduism, or this has a very easy alignment. It's that in any sense you could become religious about anything.
You could turn a religion around whatever this thing is.
It's the never wilting plant.
There you go.
It's because it's made of plastic,
Yeah.
but it's never wilting.
society.
It's amazing, right? But in the sense is like you can center your life around anything, and I like the point. I haven't read it. It's on my long list of books that I would like to read eventually one day, maybe. But I like the title. It's "You Are What You Worship," and there's this sense that worship is how God created us. What it means to be human is to worship.
Yeah.
I mean,
and you
go to a concert.
Something.
I mean, go to the church of Taylor Swift.
There you
right?
go.
Like, you think of this, right? Of like, you have your sacred songs, you have your religious texts, you have your way you worship, you sway on this song. You know what I mean? And so that's the nature of us as humans, is that we are worshipful, we are religious, and it's made, obviously, for us to be oriented and pointed towards God. But in the real sense is that that's not always how we do it. And so what we worship defines who we are, defines what we aim toward, it defines what we do, and in all of these, if we take God out of the picture, we don't just not worship anything. It's that's not the correct way of saying it.
No, you're right.
But it's not that we don't cease to worship. We just change it, and we may not see it as we converted. Like, I didn't convert from Christianity to entertainment, but that's my effective God. I didn't convert from Christianity to environmentalism, but that's my effective God. And so I think that is the way that we should look at this, because I think if we look at humanity as anything other than worshipers, that we're missing something very fundamental within ourselves.
That's right.
That if we don't have that piece of the puzzle, then none of what we say is going to make sense. Because you'd say, well, I mean, maybe they're just passionate, or maybe, no, it's a worshipful thing, and we'll talk about this later in the form of environmentalism. But you almost look, and like I had mentioned earlier, you have your holy people, you have your sinners, you have your sacraments, you have your way that you're saved, you have all of these things fit in each of these categories. And if you just really say, you say, okay, if I'm looking at this as a religion, what would be this? What would be that? And all of a sudden, you start seeing that there is a really serious religious framework around it. That is, once you see it, it's unavoidable.
Yeah, 100%. Couldn't say it any better. And so that's what this series is going to be about. Remove God out of the context, and then what we're going to do in this series is just start filling it with everything else. We're just going to take stuff from the culture and try to paint that picture. And so when you look at what I'm willing to do as a believer in Jesus Christ, what I'm willing to do, what we're about to study and go through, these people are willing to do also for what they believe in. I am willing to sacrifice for Christ. Okay? I am willing to go through pain for my Savior. I'm willing to leave my family because of my belief system. I'm willing to die. I'm willing to go to jail. If the government came in here and said you can't preach no more, or we're going to lock you up, then I'm going to have a jail ministry. If I give my money, I give away money to the church. I give way more than 10%. Way more. I haven't just given 10% since I was like 18 years old, maybe. I've always given money freely to the cause of Christ, whether it's here at the church, missions, just helping the poor, everything. I give. And it's real sacrifice involved in that. I raised my children. I indoctrinated my children. I'm using that word. I indoctrinated my children in the tenets of my faith. And so when you begin to look at the things that I am willing to do for my belief system, these people, whether it's the entertainment world, whether it's the political world, the environmental world, the gay activist world, whatever world you want to talk about, those people are willing to do the same thing, even if what they're doing is harmful to themselves and to society in general. They don't care. They don't care. They are true blue believers in what they worship. Just like I am a true blue believer in what I worship, except my worship is reserved only for the Lord Jesus Christ. So let's begin with that. So as we begin to work our way into it, I want to start with Karl Marx. And the reason I want to start here, who is the founder and the primary theorist of Marxism, is because I believe in our culture, in our society here, he, in communism, the Communist Manifesto, socialism, things like that, to me, I believe was probably the truly the opposite of Christianity or religion in general. And meaning, back into the Roman days that we were talking about, even though they worshiped Caesar or they worshiped other gods, there was still worship components of lighting candles or sacrifice. But Karl Marx in communism is kind of in our culture, the one who said no to all the religion, and it wasn't just focusing on one person, like worship Karl Marx, but worship the idea that he presented. And then from that idea spawns, I believe, the center work for environmentalism. Because you're not worshiping Al Gore, you're worshiping the idea of what environmentalists preach. In gay activism, you're not worshiping Harvey Milk, I believe was his name back in the 80s or whatever, but you're worshiping the idea that they are presenting. And Karl Marx did that. So,
you can almost say, this is just as you were talking kind of came to me, is it's almost like your religion became whatever type of utopia.
Yes.
Like it's almost like you start worshiping a type of society.
That's right. And that's what he was preaching.
Right. Like his would be, you worship the type of communist society, which would be like the workers, being in power.
Yeah.
Like that
no
idea.
Rich people, no poor people. Listen to what I just said. No rich people, no poor people.
Yeah.
You know what that means? Everybody's poor.
Yeah,
that's what that means.
Pretty much.
That means everybody's poor. So let's get into how he viewed it. He viewed religion as the soul. Just jump in here anytime, Brother Devin. He viewed religion as the soul of soulless conditions, or the opium of the people. So he would teach about religion like this. He would say, religion consoles the oppressed and exploited by offering them heaven what they are denied on earth. At the same time, by holding before them a vision of what they are denied, religion plays at least partly a progressive role in that it gives the common people some idea of what a better order would be. So he understood that religion did play a role in the masses, that it was almost like for the oppressed, it gave them an opium, it gave them hope for something in the future. So he was cool with it in that context, in that idea. But here comes the clincher. But when it becomes possible, and this is what you was referring to, when it becomes possible to realize that better order upon earth in the form of communism, then religion becomes wholly reactionary, for it distracts men from establishing a now possible good society on earth by still turning their eyes towards heaven. In other words, if you don't have communism to transform that utopia community into that worldview of a perfect society, then you need religion. But once the better form comes, which is you can have heaven on earth, called communism, then there's no need for your religion, and it actually becomes a distraction of what we're trying to attain here on earth. Yeah. Same thing that the environmentalists preach, Same thing that the gay activists preach, same thing that socialism preaches, same thing that anything else out there in this world that tries to take Christianity, God, out of the equation. They're saying, you're messing us up, man. We're trying to make a perfect society, and you and your book, you and your God is standing in our way. It's the same thing. And this is why I wanted to start here. Its sanctification of the existing social order makes it counter-revolutionary force. Thus, in the course of building a communist society, the Marxists must fight religion because it will inevitably stand in its path, because we can't worship anything else except God. But in a communist society, there will be no need to persecute religion, for its essential functions will have disappeared. So in their utopia worldview, people would just walk away from religion, because I no longer need it to soothe me, because now I have heaven on earth. But again, the reason that is wrong is because the one component that they're not factoring in is that man has always worshiped God, no matter if it was Abraham being called out by God, or Moses at a burning bush, or Daniel refusing to bow down and being thrown into the lion's den, or Paul being martyred, or Peter being turned upside down. There's always going to be a group of people on this earth, a remnant that serves the Lord Jesus Christ. Period. You'll never, ever get rid of that. So as we begin to look at some of the functionalities of Marxism, think about the ruling Communist Party in China. All right. So China promotes atheism and discourages citizens from practicing religion. Of the millions and I guess, billions, I don't know, millions of people who are affiliated with the Communist Party, they are officially banned from engaging in spiritual traditions. Period. All of them. Mao, who was the communist revolutionary of China, viewed, you know what his religion was?
What was it?
The Communist Party.
Yeah.
It was the government. And so he viewed any other religion outside of the Communist Party as its enemy.
But an interesting part is, like you said, the state basically becomes a religion at that point. Because, I mean, if you even go in Chinese households right now, a lot of them will have pictures of Mao hanging on the wall. They'll have pictures of President Xi on the wall. Or you think about North Korea, you'll have the Kims on your wall. So it's really interesting how it's then almost they call them the glorious leader or whatever. I think in North Korea is that then the leader takes on these almost godlike qualities. And you're to worship them, you're to acknowledge them, right? And so it's really interesting that way. And I think a reason, like you said, is for the need. If you're going to, if you say that, I'm going to, promote and have a communist government, why would you then need to get rid of religion? It is the sense that, you won't need it, but it's also the strict sense that if you have any higher ethic than the government, you're not going to do what they want you to do.
Loyalty. Right.
And so it's a matter of, if these people have any ethic that is higher than the ethic that we give them, we can't make them do what we want them to do.
Control them.
And so that is an essence there. So it's like, okay, well, if I am their religious ethic, then of course they're going to do what I want them to do, because I'm effectively, if I was the leader of the communist country, I would effectively be their God. And even if they say, oh no, it's the government, it's our people's, it's clouded in that language, but in the end, it's not functionally that way.
Yeah, and so even today, the Chinese president believes that communism is God and not God. I mean, even today. So here's where we begin to, I wanted to go down that road because I believe that's the genesis of a lot of the utopia thoughts that that we see in these other political factions that bring God into their life, not God, Jehovah, but whatever they believe in terms of their political stance. So let's start here. Religion and environmentalism is an emerging teaching subfield in the academic disciplines of religious studies. Today, you can go and they're starting to actually combine the two, because even secular sinners are recognizing that there are tenets to believing the environmental doctrine. So there's actually things that they're beginning to teach. Also, when you begin to study the surveys in America, the more religious someone is, in terms of they pray, they go to church, things like that, then the less they're going to have an affiliation with the extreme environmental positions. Okay, this is a Pew survey. On average, people who are less religious tend to be more extreme on the environmental agenda of things. So it's a weird dynamic that happens there, that the more somebody presses into their relationship with God, the less extreme they become in the environmental aspects of things. And the less someone follows God, the more extreme they are with the environmental agenda.
Yeah.
Isn't that an interesting fact? Won't you talk about real quick about the tenets of environmentalism, or just in general?
Yeah, for sure. So I think it helps to define what we mean by environmentalism first, because we're obviously talking about somebody who follows it, is dogmatic about it, who says my way or the highway kind of deal. There's no, you're not going to have a conversation.
Hey, let me give you the term they can Google.
Yeah.
Okay. Eco-terrorism.
Yeah, eco-terrorism.
That's what we're talking about. Eco-terrorism.
Like people who will bomb a processing plant because it's hurting the environment.
There you go.
Or vandalize, or stop people in the street, different things like that. We're not talking about being environmentally conscious. Like if you say, I really think we shouldn't pollute the river, that's not being an environmentalist.
That's not being an
eco-terrorist.
Eco-terrorist.
Or eco-terrorist. Depending on how you want to say.
Eco.
But that, it's not the sense of, hey, I love nature, I want to respect nature, or hey, if we're going to cut down some trees, let's plant some more. That's not what we mean by environmentalism. And we will talk next week about how does the Bible say we approach the environment.
I love hiking. You know why I love hiking? Because I love the environment. I see God in nature.
Right, exactly. And so we will get to next week a pushback, because a lot of people would take that info that you just said is like, oh, see, that shows that your religion hurts the environment. But that's not what that actually says. What that says is that with how we order our lives in religion determines how dogmatic and extreme people get about that. So way I would define a religion, first off, is that a religion is something that has some explanatory power, explains how the world works, how the world is, and then what you should do about it. That's a very, very simple definition. But
it's a worldview.
But it's a worldview, right? It's how you view the world, and then because you view the world that way, how do I live? And so when we look at environmentalism as a religion, it has saints.
Al Gore's one of them.
Al Gore would be a saint.
Well, he'd be like a prophet, probably.
Yeah, maybe. But he's still a saint.
He's a false prophet. We're going to get in that.
Maybe like somebody like Jane Goodall, who lived with, the apes, did her research. People who are very environmentally active, like those guys who are cleaning up the ocean, which like good things, right? Some of them are doing good things. Like it's not like I'm like, oh, they're all terrible, but like they would, in the view of the religion, they would be a saint.
That's good.
Then you have sinners. So this could be a wide range of sinners. You have
oil companies.
Right, oil companies.
It's probably Lucifer.
They're the worst of the worst.
They're the devil.
Right. worst of the worst. Then you have like tiers. Then you have people who maybe, don't make their own energy. Or maybe people with gas cars. You should do that. They might not say you're as bad as the oil tycoon, but you're still bad. So that's a sin. A sin is hurting the environment, and that can be done widely, right? Then you have your sacraments. So we call them ordinances in the Assemblies of God, but you have your ways in which you worship, right? So a sacrament could be protesting there. Protest oil.
And this is so good.
You have Just Stop Oil, who their sacrament would be that they chain themselves.
That's the name of their church.
Yeah, basically.
Okay. Of their ministry.
Right, Just Stop Oil.
Okay.
We're ministering to the world with Just Stop Oil, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so they will chain themselves across roads, block traffic, which, interestingly enough, causes more oil to be burned when you're in a traffic jam than when the traffic's moving freely.
It doesn't matter.
But it doesn't matter because it's about the ideology.
That's
it's about
exactly right.
proclaiming the belief, not actually the effect. So you have that. You have people who will, glue themselves to paintings in the Louvre, which, what does that painting have to do with the environment? I have no idea, right? But it's not about that.
I went to Ecuador. You know what I did at Ecuador on a mission trip? I dug a septic tank. What does that have to do with preaching the gospel? But I was helping the missionary.
Right.
Same thing as gluing yourself, to a painting.
Right. It's like, this is my declaration of what I believe.
Belief.
Right. So you have that. You have your obligatory need to buy an electric vehicle. You can't have that, or not a vehicle at all. You ride bikes or whatever. That's by me doing this, I am, being an environmentalist. You vote for your green politicians, things like that. You have your sacred texts or sacred documentaries like the Al Gore documentary. I heard an interesting thing is I was watching some different videos prepping for this, and there was a guy, it was actually back in 2009, I believe, he was actually talking about almost the religious nature of this. And he said, Al Gore was basically the Messiah who rose twice. Once when he received the Academy Award, and the other one when he received the Nobel Prize.
Yep.
The interesting thing of you have your sacred text, you have your environmental texts, you have your things that say, you need, the world's going to end in this many years if we don't, stop, using oil or things like that. That would be the sacred text that we all use. We must agree with these, or you're an infidel, right? You're a sinner if you don't agree with our sacred text, our ideology. And then you got temples. You got places of worship.
Yep.
You got the forest.
Yes.
Or if you want to be more specific, you got the Grand Canyon. You worship at the hills of the Grand Canyon because of the beauty. You worship at the ocean, right? And so all of those, when you break it down, it has a very religious structure to it. It has every single place, and it
makes you feel good.
Right.
There's a good feeling that comes inside of you whenever you're doing one of these things.
Right. And if you wanted to say, okay, well, where's the Messiah? It's you. You're the savior of the environment by doing these things, by protesting, by reducing your waste. You take on the idea of the savior because you're the one who is doing it and saving this environment. And you could say that the environment itself is God. And I think a really important aspect here between the environmentalist and somebody who appreciates nature, who values nature, who says nature is a good thing, we should steward it, we should take care of it, has a true Christian ethic, is that a lot of times it's not that I say that the plant has value. The plant has value. But it's saying that the plant has value equal or above to people, right? And it's saying nature is more valuable than us. You will see this a lot you will poll people and people who have this really extreme belief. I've seen where they would say, it would have been better, would you wish that you hadn't have been born? And they will say, yes, because humans are a scourge on the environment. That's the extreme of this, is saying that I wish, would it be better, would you prefer that all humans went extinct so that the earth could thrive? And people will say yes to that question. And so that in essence shows like you have exalted this as a God, you know, that it's transcendent, right? You know, would it be better that, you know, like if you ask the Christian the question like, is it better that we worship God, or would God be justified in condemning us, right? The idea, well, compared to the transcendent God, yes, we agree. So that's the way it is. If we are sinning against the God of the environment, then it'd be better we all die.
Yep.
You know, and so things like that have a really deep religious aspect to it. And when you get deep into it, you start saying, I don't care about people. I don't care about the people I'm hurting. And in reality, a lot of environmental policy that you see, the extremes, in our reality hurts most the poor.
Yep.
It really hurts most of the poor. But when
That's right.
you elevate the environment above people, you basically say, well, the poor are a justified sacrifice for the sake of the planet.
Yep.
And I just think, you know, when you get that far, you're dealing with something very different than saying, I want to care for the environment.
That's right. And so that's whenever you begin to have conversations with these individuals at the highest levels of this hierarchy that begin to promote the depopulation of the earth. And they'll say that the reason they want to depopulate the earth is because of the tenets that Devin just laid out before you. And so if there's mass starvation, then it's justified. Abortion, justified. Death, justified, because we need to depopulate the earth in order to save the planet.
Yeah, and in the most extreme sense, you have people who are actively trying to cause things that do depopulate the planet.
That's right.
I mean, you know, in any religion, you have extremists, right? We have them in Christianity, right? You're Westboro Baptist, you know, type people.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like you have extremists in like the extreme of the extreme in every religion. Yeah. So if you take that and apply it to environmentalism, you have people that would want to intentionally starve a population so that the earth could thrive. And thinking of that, it's very dangerous.
And here's the problem with, you're right about the extremists with the Westboro people.
Yeah.
But here's the difference. That guy, that pastor, he's not ruling a country.
Right. And that's an important aspect of
He's at a
environmentalism.
church.
Yeah.
These people that we're talking about rule countries, and I'm going to give you an example in a second.
Yeah,
so when they make a decision, buddy, we're talking about millions of people are about to be affected in a very, very negative way, in a very real negative way. Oh boy, at Westboro, that little cult family, yes, we need to pray for them, and I feel sorry for them, and they may make some people uncomfortable when you drive by them, but they're not making policy that dictates an entire country.
100%. And I think that's a really important aspect is that environmentalism isn't, because I think in a sense it wasn't viewed as religious, it was able to pervade a lot more things than like an obvious one, right? And so just the political nature of it does make it way more pervasive, I think.
And we'll get into some of it. So he talked about the environmental group Just Stop Oil. They lie down in the middle of streets. They throw paint on expensive paintings. They glue themselves to things. Again, from a religious standpoint, I spend a lot of money. We'll go on missions trips and dig holes in Ecuador for septic tanks to help with the sewage at a girl's home. I will go and participate in things and give my time away and serve just like those guys do. So here's one of the human disasters of this eco-terrorism at the highest levels of government. Whenever governments and presidents begin, who are true believers of this, they're true believers. Just like I'm a true believer, they're a true believer. But they begin to enact policy and doctrine within their environmentalist extremist views in a country, and people begin to starve. So if you're at your computer, you can Google this. Sri Lanka's Green New Deal was a human human disaster. So type that in. Sri Lanka's Green New Deal was a human disaster. The Green New Deal was a manifesto of the environmental group, almost like a Bible of
Sacred text.
Yeah, text. It was a sacred text on what needs to happen in order to save the planet. Very similar to our belief of what Jesus Christ gave us in the Gospels of the Great Commission to save the planet in His name. These people are just doing it and again in the Green New Deal. So this is what happened. It was an ill-advised national experiment in organic farming, yielding starvation, poverty, and political chaos. So many people began to starve that they rioted and overthrew the government because they were literally starving in the streets. Listen to me, for no reason.
Yeah, just years before, Sri Lanka was one of the most prosperous and had so much food. Like, it had a thriving farming industry and everything just a few years prior.
For no stinking reason.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, hey, wake up out there. Understand what we're dealing with. I'm going to give you another one. California. So California has banned fossil fuel cars, I think, for 2035. They are trying to, or not trying, they are turning off coal plants. They are turning off their nuclear power plants. They are going to all solar and wind turbines and hydroelectric renewable energies. And so there was a heat wave last year in 2022 that brought the power grid to the brink of collapse in the state of California. You can Google this, ladies and gentlemen. Get on your computer right there. You're watching this online. Google it. Check me out. And the governor was put on defense because he began to be criticized that you are literally destroying the infrastructure of our power grid because of your ideology to this eco-terrorist, environmentalist, fundamentalist craziness for no reason. Okay? Again, going back to the people starving in the country. No reason. You don't have to do this. But they're unplugging the coal plant. They're unplugging the nuclear power plant. They're not producing enough energy. And then on top of that, they are banning all fossil fuel cars by 2035 in that state, which means you have to drive an electrical vehicle. Oh, by the way, that you can't plug in and run your air conditioning at the same time.
Yeah, and I've been to Brawley, California, which is like out from San Diego, and this is in the middle of the desert, and it was like almost 100 degrees in November. So imagine if like your air conditioning goes out in the summer, like
for no reason.
You could die.
For no reason. You don't have to do this. All right? So whenever I look at something as crazy as that, I try to put myself on the other side of it and look at myself. There have been times that I have went without television. There have been times that I have went without necessities or pleasures in my life because I paid my tithes. I paid tithes. I said no to going out to eat. I said no to new clothes. I said no to these things in my life so that I could pay 10% to the church. Some people would say, why? Why'd you do that? You didn't have to do that. I am committed to my cause. I am committed to my belief structure. I am committed to the sacrifice. The reason these people do this, and they don't care that it's going to hurt everybody, they are committed to the cause because they have replaced God in their life with this particular issue. And there's going to be other issues that we hit, but their God is this environmental doctrine, eco-terrorism. So let's talk about some of the false predictions. So in our world, we have prophets, and if prophets prophesy something that doesn't happen, you know what we call them, Brother Devin?
False prophets.
And what does that do? How does that hurt their reputation?
Well, it should kill it. Unfortunately, sometimes even in our neck of the woods,
we have a lot of forgiveness.
Yeah, probably too much sometimes. But yeah, you know, normally you at least at minimum are a little more cautious with what they say.
Okay.
Right? I mean, you know.
Yeah. Okay.
We'll leave that there. That's a whole nother nother live stream.
All right. So the environmental religion has they have so many failed prophecies that it is astounding to me that truly intellectual people, like really smart people, I do not doubt their intelligence at all, still believe them. I'm for real about this, because these people have been wrong so many times, but yet really smart academic people still believe it. So again, I say, how? How are you able to still believe this stuff? And it goes back to their belief structure. They are committed to the cause. We got false prophets in our circle, but I'm still committed to the cause, even though we have false people. But the difference, I think, is we will call them out, and I won't let them preach at this church.
No.
How about that? That's
right.
One of the differences.
Right.
All right, so let's just look at it real quick. So we're going to start with Al Gore. And the reason is because he's one of the guys that really made this famous.
Yeah.
He had that documentary. Jump in here anytime if you have anything, Brother Devin. But he had this documentary called Inconvenient Truth in 2006. It was so widely accepted. The man got filthy rich off of this. He also has a lot of stock in green energy companies and renewable energies. So there is a financial incentive for him to be an extremist and to get everybody buying his product. So just keep that as an FYI. But he also won the Nobel Peace Prize for this particular documentary. Incredible. So I mean, he was like celebrated. So here it is.
Think about this. Gio, who born and raised in Costa Rica, they would watch this documentary in Costa Rica.
There you go.
So, I mean, it wasn't just in the U.S. It was
Everywhere.
global.
Yeah. So he made a lot of predictions in that documentary, and because we have time now that we can look back at it, we can begin to ask ourselves questions. Was this environmental prediction accurate or not? The answer is no, by the way. All right, so here it goes. Gore said there would be a 75% chance the entire North Polar ice cap would likely be gone. You hear that all the time. Mm-hmm. He put a date on it. He said 2016. We're making this video when?
2023.
And there's still ice there. In 2006, he said in the very near future, the sea is going to rise 20 feet. He said that in 2006. This is 2023, so what, 18 years ago, something like that? 19 years ago? It has risen 3 inches. 3 inches. If we stay on the same current rate of the Earth since 1993, it rose 3 inches from 1993, excuse me. So it's risen less than that since 2006. But if the sea rises 3 inches in this same time span, it will take 1,136 years for it to rise 20 feet. He said it's going to happen in the near future. Gore also claimed in 2006 that there would be no solving the climate change if drastic measures weren't taken around the world to reduce greenhouse gases by 2016. So that means we're already doomed, according to that prediction. He also said that in 2006 that there would be no more ice on the top of Mount Kilimanjaro in Africa. And I was just there in Tanzania. I didn't see it with my own eyes, but you can Google it. There's still ice caps on top of Mount Kilimanjaro. Note some of the other predictions that have not come true by other people. In 2004, The Guardian said that the Arctic will be ice-free by 2018. False. In 2009, Prince Charles said we only have 8 years to save the planet, and that was in 2009. In 2009, also The Independent said that the Arctic will be ice-free by 2014. Again, all false. And then in 2013, The Guardian printed a paper that said we only have 500 days before climate chaos. And there's others. I mean, I could do that forever and ever. And the reason some of that stuff happens, and the reason there's such a the propaganda is so thick out there is because whenever the government or other agencies fund research, they only fund the research that they get the response that they're wanting. So if Brother Devin and myself were two scientists and we were going to study the environmental effects of everything, and we both came, to get the money, and we presented our papers in order to have it published. But let's say mine was more of the conservative viewpoint that we're not all going to die next year. But his was more part of that narrative that I just read to you. They're going to publish that paper and then put the money into that research in order to get the outcome of that narrative that they're wanting. So you, ladies and gentlemen, never even hear the other side. And in fact, the other part, the narrative, is going to be skewed even more falsely in order to drive that narrative, because that's how the money comes in. That's how the offerings are given. You want to say it like that, from a religious connotation. And that's what happens. And so it just becomes a doom loop because it is their God, and it doesn't matter what the sacrifice is because they are committed to the cause, just like myself. It doesn't matter the sacrifice that I have to do. I am committed to the cause. Did you know that I gave up my salary in pastoring before, in 2012? I gave up my salary. I planted a garden. I worked a side job. I gave the entire salary up. It was a complete sacrifice. I don't say that from a bragging standpoint. I say that because other people would look at me as crazy because they don't understand my commitment level. Well, I look at some of these people who do this stuff as crazy because I don't understand their commitment level. And that's the part that we're trying to bring to this influence teaching, that if you take God out of someone's life, they're going to worship their children, they'll worship their spouse, they'll worship their job, they'll worship money, they'll worship whatever else is in their life. We're just hitting environmentalists right now, because we're going to hit other stuff as well, because of the nature of who we are. We are worshipers by nature, friend, and you'll never ever be able to escape that because it's in your DNA. We're about to wrap this thing up. Anything you want to share?
Yeah, I just think it's really important to just think about this in the sense of, looking at it as a religious movement, because we interact, and I think as we go through these over the next several weeks, you interact with a religion differently than you do with a different movement, right? So let's just say I said, I have this movement, would you be willing to take on their beliefs? I'm like, maybe, possibly. But when I say there's this other religion, would you be willing to take on their beliefs? You're like, I'm a little less. Well, insert, if I said, hey, Christian, would you be willing to take on the tenets of Islam? Be like, no, why would I do that? That's another religion. I don't follow that religion. I'm a Christian. Okay? Well, if you look at the environmentalists as a movement, you can say, oh yeah, I'll take that on. But if you look at it as another religion, then that's a totally different ballgame. And I think that's the important aspect, is if we don't acknowledge what things are, we will approach them inappropriately. If I think a stranger coming down the sidewalk is my best friend's brother, I don't know them very well, but I know that, I'll be like, oh yeah, this is a great guy. But if in reality it's not my best friend's brother, but it's a mugger coming to take me out, I'm going to interact with them very, very differently. And so I think that's why this conversation is important, because the way we approach it will be drastically different based off of that. And so this isn't just an intellectual exercise just for fun. It's that this is really essential, because there are environmentalist churches, 100%. Father God, and they'll talk about Mother Earth too.
That's right.
And so because they didn't view environmentalism as a religion, and they let it come in, and then it corrupted and pulled them away from the appropriate Christian view of the world. They basically deified that you have some kind of Christian environmentalist hybrid. Right. And you see that in all of these movements that we're going to be talking about, that people who were unaware let it pervade the church. And you see it is in the same way that you would say, if I, was a Christian, yet I started accepting things about Islam, that I would corrupt the gospel. That's the exact same way. And so that's why I think this is really important.
Yep. And so there is a proper view of the world in terms of environment. There's a proper biblical way. And so we're going to hit that in part 2 next week. We just didn't have time to balance it all today. So hey, I hope you're going to enjoy this series. I certainly am, because we're going to get deep into our culture and our society just like we did today. But listen, thank you guys so much for joining us. If you didn't like it, please like it, subscribe, hit that subscription bell, and help us get this influence and be our partner. Help us getting this influence out here at the Revival Center YouTube channel. Thank you, Brother Devin. Thank you, Aaron, back there in the back, behind the camera. And we'll see you next Tuesday, 8:30 right here.